Hey, good morning and welcome to A Gram of Hope. And what we do is we take the content, the information, the experiences of others to let you know that there is hope. You don't have to be the greatest, you don't have to be the best, but all you have to do really is give of yourself, and that which you give will identify you as somebody unique, somebody significant, somebody who has allowed hope to do a great work in your life, and through your experiences, somebody else will receive hope. This morning, we're speaking with Charles Hillary and Ruth Clark. Now, you may not know those names, but again, you don't have to be a superstar to be a superstar. They are ones who have excelled in just living life, and through what they've done, they've helped other people. We're talking about the athletes of the 70s and 80s. Who was Toledo's best hockey player back in the 70s and 80s? How about the best golfer? How about the best tennis player? Well, let's ask about sports that you might be more familiar with if those didn't ring a bell. How about the best basketball player, the best football player? Well, the best track star, the best baseball player. The person that may be familiar with who was who back in the day is Charles Hillary. And what Charles does is he is the overseer of the Page athletes of the 70s and 80s. Charles, how you doing, man?
Good morning, Mr. Graham. I feel great.
All right. Hey, you've got so much on the inside of you, so we're going to allow you to get right in there, and then Ruth, she can jump in wherever she feels like she's got to come into the scenario. But look here, what people need to know is you've got such a passion for this athletes of 70s and 80s. You've got so many contacts. Man, you running this thing out of Denver. Now, you were here in Toledo, right?
That is correct.
All right, and you played for DeVilbiss?
That is correct.
And what did you do at DeVilbiss, man?
At DeVilbiss, I played football and basketball there at DeVilbiss. I started school at DeVilbiss in 1974, was my freshman year. My sophomore year through my senior year, I started varsity football at DeVilbiss. I played basketball my sophomore, junior, and senior year also, but JV and then varsity my junior and senior year.
All right. Now, look, you said DeVilbiss, you said 1974, and we're going to get into a lot of the names a little bit later, but around that time was Terry Crosby and Farley Bell, were they over there?
Yeah, they were seniors my freshman year. That is correct.
So you got a chance.
Legendary.
So you got a chance to play with the big dogs.
I got a chance to see them play.
Well, let's talk about your site. You know, what makes the athletes of the 70s and 80s so unique? Because a lot of people are going to be listening to this podcast around the country. A lot of people have done what you did. They left Toledo and moved on to another state, another city. So athletes of 70s and 80s, what's the driving force? What makes that so unique?
Well, athletes of the 70s and 80s is a brotherhood and a sisterhood of positivity of athletics from the 70s, 80s, and beyond.
Okay. And when you say beyond, you're talking about after they left what they were known for, they still had that same spirit, so you kept in touch.
That is correct. And also, we talk about the youth, you know, the up-and-coming next legends of Toledo, Ohio. You know, we have a lot of high school students now that we talk about. We try to acknowledge them so that they'll be the next move in the next generation to move forward, to move our page forward, our society forward, our city forward with their activities, and they should be honored also.
Doc, now, well, here's a side question. Since we're talking about you also are connected with the youth, all right? It's said that athletics builds character. I mean, that's been said down through the years. But now you've got in this age, and who knows what's coming in 2025, 26, so forth. But you got now legal wagering, you got NIL, you got legalized marijuana. Do you think that the athletic spirit will still maintain its integrity with all of these external influences? Now, yeah, there was marijuana when we played, but we didn't have those other influences so predominant when we played. And so what do you think? Is athletics going to still maintain its integrity in the future?
I would hope so. We had typewriters back in our day. We have computers now. So technology changes in events and circumstances always lead to something different. But athletics is something that joins us all together. So the character of it should develop as it goes along also.
All right. And so you see the athletes of the 70s and 80s having influence on that.
That is correct.
All right. Let me ask you this.
Tradition and history.
The site covers some 40 years. And I'm going to ask you this just to think about it. It's like I'm going to put the pot on the stove and let it simmer for a little while, and then we're going to come back to it. So buckle up. Over 40 years, give us some thought. What would you say were some of the best athletes, some of the best experiences that you saw on the field, on the court, or what have you? And before you answer that, you spoke off air about Macomber not having any fields, not having any tracks. We didn't have the biggest stadium. What might have been, according to what you've seen, the best football stadium, the best basketball stadium, the best track field? And then we'll talk about the best athletic experience after that.
Well, I think probably one of the best fields was Libby High School, Scott High School. They had great fields. At Scott, they had just, we're talking almost 50 years ago. Well, Scott, they had just rebuilt Scott in the 70s for the football field. Libby has always had a beautiful field. Wade High School also had a great-looking football field. When we talk about basketball facilities, we've got to be talking about Scott High School, Libby High School. Those had the bigger gyms. And the smaller gyms would be like gyms like Macomber with smaller gym, and also DeVilbiss had a smaller gym. But there were a few great stadiums out there and gyms and facilities that held a lot of great memories.
See, I'm a little bit partial. Even though I didn't go there, I was always impressed with Wade High School, their gym, and their field. So I'd almost see it as a tie between Wade and Scott. No, Wade and Libby, because I really, really liked the way that Libby was set up. Ruth, you played a little ball. What was your experience? What gym do you think in the gyms that you played in might have been one of the better gyms?
Probably Libby.
Libby?
And Scott, maybe.
Yeah, see, Scott's going to stick out. A lot of people are going to talk about Scott. But I remember seeing the Toledo Troopers professional women's team play at Wade, and I was just truly, truly impressed with that stadium. And because it's subjective, I'm sure that there are people that's going to send you some notifications to the site saying they got it wrong. This was the better stadium. But it's subjective. It depends on what your experience was. Now, let me ask you this,
yes,
Brother Charles. Teams. What teams do you think had the most heart back in the day? I mean, really played with passion, because there were teams that people figured they were just going to blow out the water, and then all of a sudden they found out they were in the midst of a close game. I'm going to ask you, then I'm going to let Ruth answer after you.
I would say that Start High School, lots of pride at Start, and also at Central High School, Central Catholic High School, another school that that came out and they played, and they were rough. You never had an easy game at Start. You never had an easy game at Woodward either. Woodward was a school with lots of pride. You go to Woodward, you better have all your pads on when we went to Woodward to play. So Woodward, Start, Central, even when you went out to wait, they gave you a war. So all of those schools back in the day would be some of the schools that you didn't think that would come at you the way that they did, but they did.
Woodward always seemed to have one key athlete in one of the sports. It might be football. They had that one person that stuck out. Basketball might be the following year. They have one person that stuck out. But Woodward would just seem to come out of nowhere. So I agree with you on that. And for where they were located at, Central would give you a game. I felt the same way about St. Francis. St. Francis had a way of recruiting just the right couple people, actually, that would give you the only thing is they weren't in the city league, so what they accomplished was looked at in their own league. Had they been in the city league, it might have been a different outcome. What you think?
Well, St. Francis was in the blue division, so they were tough always. St. Francis, to go to St. Francis, you had to qualify to be there. And not only were they great athletes, they were great students also. Yeah. And, Nelson Bowden, who is a college Hall of Famer and a Hall of Famer at St. Francis, played football there. Awesome. And Sean Reed, the state champs in 1983 in basketball. So St. Francis has a storied, strong history.
Mm-hmm. Ruth, what about you?
I'm going to have to run with my own school, Macomber and Libby.
You thought that they were just schools with a lot of heart.
Yeah, Libby had a lot of heart. Macomber, we were underestimated, but we had heart.
Macomber also had a few good players from time to time that would just take them to a whole nother level. All right, Brother Hillary.
Yes, sir.
Back in the day when we were coming along, right before Moses Malone came along and changed the dynamic, getting drafted out of high school, getting $1 million contract, a lot of professionals, baseball, football, what have you, they actually had to work jobs. Man, do you think that would make a difference today if athletes actually had to work as opposed to getting a $3 million contract out the gate?
Yeah, I would think so. That make a big difference. That means that their cost of living would have been like it was back in the day, too. So things do change. And, yeah, it would be a lot harder to go to work and then go play your favorite sport because it is a sport.
Well, see, and that's my thought is that in order to do both, you really would have to be in shape. Your mind would have to be together so that you couldn't just walk out there after partying all night and then start playing in your athletic event because you may have gotten off work the day before, had to go practice or work out, and then go play whatever your respective sport was. So you had to maintain a certain discipline all the time. I remember you don't see it as much now because a lot of these athletes, they are so valuable to the team in what the team is compensating them for. If they get a broken finger, they don't play. If they catch a cold, they don't play. Where back in the day, cats would have a cast on their arm and be playing basketball or whatever they participated in, even while they were hurt. So I think the dynamic would be different simply because people would have to be more disciplined. And I think that's a component or element of the athletic experience that's missing. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that. Simply, back in our day, which was one of the most competitive leagues in Toledo history, in the 70's, in the mid to late 70's. If you got hurt, basically, you probably stayed on the field because the guy behind you was quite capable of replacing you. So you played with injuries. you played. And to Mrs. Clark, I would say Macomber was more of a powerhouse. Macomber with Kelvin Ramsey, all of the great athletes, Michael Worrells, all of the great athletes, and preceding them also with Rob Johnson and Skeeter and all of those guys that went there. With the facilities they had, you never underestimated Macomber. That was out of the question when I played, because we knew you was in for a war anytime you played any sport against Macomber.
Yeah, there was a guy that played that I don't think really got a whole lot of press. Maybe he did back in the day, and I just wasn't aware of it because he was a senior, was a guy named Steve Curl. Steve would just play above the rim, man, and I just don't think that he got the notoriety that he probably should have received. But he was a bad guy.
He was a beast.
Yeah. Not only talking about the guys that you named, because you did name Mike Worrells. We did have a lot of A-listers that came out of Macomber, especially during the 80's. Ruth, who was the guy that, I mean, he's still playing. Well, not playing, but he's a sportscaster now.
Jim Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, that boy was a beast.
He came out in the 90s.
He came out in the 90s?
Yes.
All right. So Jim was one of the ones that really evolved. And Jim was right there in the hood. He lived a few streets over from where I was raised at. Of course, I was old by the time he came along. But, a lot of these cats, they didn't have the best basketball courts in their neighborhood. I remember seeing Farley Bell come over to old dirt court that we had up in the neighborhood. But their prowess, their dedication to the game is what separated them out. Now, Ruth, you play, of course, with the women. Anybody stick out in your mind? Because a lot of the women are covered on the Athletes in 70's and 80's.
Well, what I can remember, some of our players were like Lisa Hunt, Joyce Smith, Yolanda Sutton, Felicia Hill from Scott, Michi Spearman. It's quite a few, but those are the ones that kind of stick out that I remember of.
So, Brother Hillary, are the women really getting the same amount of attention on the site that the men get?
Yes, I would think so. Of course, we have more men on the page, but we honor our women. We have members such as Ann Strong, Libby Cowboy, state champion, Francesca Washington, Woodward High School All-American, Brenda Moorhead, great track star back in the day, Olympic track star. We've got Miss Miller, who went to DeVilbiss, or Barbara Miller, who went to DeVilbiss, that ran cross country, played basketball, volleyball. We try to make sure that our ladies are honored. We have lots of legendary ladies on our page, and they participate in everything, and they make our page.
Do you think that what recently happened not long ago with the WNBA, do you think that will cause a spike to women paying more attention to the athletes of 70's and 80's? Because the people that you named were the pioneers, and they didn't get the same prestige that the athletes are going to get now. I don't know when someone's going to be listening to this podcast, but recently it was announced that the WNBA was going to allow all 12 teams to be able to fly to their games, where before they just had to do the best they could. So even here in 2024, the early part of 2024, a change has been made. Now, if somebody's listening to this 2 or 3 years from now, they're probably going to say, they really had to go through that? So do you post that type of thing so that maybe there's a historical track on the Athletes of 70's and 80's page?
Yeah, we've got Zaya Cook on the page quite a bit. Her mom's on the page. So, yeah, we talk about that too, the advancement of ladies' athletics in sports. Yeah, it's come a long way. And again, yeah, some of the pioneers made that all possible. So yeah, I agree with you. They're starting to move along. They're more athletic than ever before. But again, back in the day, even though they didn't get as much publicity, the athletics were strong in women's sports.
All right, let's talk about back in the day just for a moment. Then I'm going to hit you with that question about the most outstanding game or outstanding event that took place during the game. And Ruth, get your hat on because I'm going to ask you the same question. What was the most outstanding, most exciting? I got one in my head that I didn't see, but everybody was talking about it. But before we get to that, you talk about the people that have made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of those people that were back from the 70's, 80's, do they still come back? Do they still talk? And while you're thinking about that, you guys started out with what, 50 people to start this webpage? Huh? So now you're up to how many?
4,307.
That's remarkable. And do those people give back?
Yes. Our members give back to the city of Toledo since 2018. We developed the Giving Back program, which is constituted of our members who donate money, time, and allow us to give back to the less fortunate of Toledo, Ohio. Our treasurer, Earl Hopings, is in charge of going around. He's a chaplain also, going around the homeless facilities with the donations from the page of athletes of the 70's and 80's, which is totally funded by our members of the page. And we've been doing that every year since 2018, when it was developed. We run camps for kids. We also, we're out in the city to help and give back to those who gave back to us.
And I understand that every May, and I don't know how many Mays you have been doing it, but you guys have a really, really huge picnic.
That is correct. It's an historical picnic. We've been doing it it started again in 2018, but due to COVID, we didn't have it during that year. But it's historical. Not many places or any that I can remember have all of the athletes from their city and around in the surrounding areas be able to all get together in a group and just have fun and enjoy and share in stories of their history.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys got some stories being athletes.
Yeah.
Now, in 2024, I guess you guys had like Kelvin Ramsey and some other people that have been out of the market come back into the market. Who were some of the names that were invited that year?
Well, 2024 honorees will be Terry Crosby, Kenny Cunningham, Kelvin Ramsey.
And what schools did they go to?
Okay, Donald Collins, NBA basketball player, Scott High School. Kelvin Ramsey, Macumber MacMan, NBA great. Okay, Ohio State, Bishop Ramsey, sir, and then you got Kenny Cunningham, Western Michigan University Hall of Famer. He'll be there. Rogers Ram. So they also represent the community.
Yes.
Not only are they great athletes and they're great people. So that's a lot, and we're so proud to honor them. Last year we honored Linda Jefferson, one of the great Toledo
Yes,
Troopers.
she was.
So as we talk about ladies that have reached out there, there's one right there.
Yeah, and Linda's still very active. At the time of this recording, she was very active in the community, still doing a lot of great work. But let's talk about that outstanding event. Now, I hope I don't steal your thunder, but I had about three, actually. One was Terry Crosby doing the 360 finger roll. He would go into the hole, and somebody was coming across, and instead of just going up, he turned all the way around and did the finger roll, and it went in. And then I mentioned Steve Curl earlier, and you mentioned Michael Worlds. I saw both of them run from one end of the court all the way down to the other end of the court, leap up and throw the offender's ball out off the court. They had to catch him, and as the person was going up, they didn't foul the person. They threw the ball out off the court. And I said, man, first of all, they had a lot of athletic ability to run the full length of the court and catch the person, and then to leap high enough to catch the ball and throw it away. But what was something that you might have saw?
Well, now that you mentioned that, we have to understand that Jim Cox, the head coach of Macomber back in the day,
yes,
when Michael Worlds played and Steve Kerr also played, well, his philosophy of running and working and pushing yourself to be the best that you can be in the condition made for that inside of that small gym. Well, Michael Worlds, we got to understand something. Michael Worlds was a world-class track star. So not only could he jump, he could run.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Mr. Cox, because he was one of the best coaches ever. I mean, he was right there with Ben Williams in my estimation. What's your thought?
Oh, I agree with that. Jim Cox, a Hall of Famer at Toledo, in basketball. Also, he also played against the Holland Globetrotters back in the day for the Washington Generals. A great athlete, great coach, period. I think there are so many, not just Mr. Cox. There are so many great coaches back in the day that helped along to make it, to make everybody successful back then. I agree with that.
Yeah, and then we're gonna throw it over to Ruth and get her thoughts. You don't have a whole lot of, just maybe one or two that you saw that kind of stood out in your mind.
I didn't see this one, but I hear a lot of people used to talk about it. In '85, my husband played for Libby, and I think he scored about over 20 points on Scott, and Ben Williams had like 3 people guarding, and they beat Scott that year. So that was a pride and joy for him. He talked about it forever.
And what was Robin's last name?
Clark.
There you go. You guys got to mention Robin Clark on the site, Mr. Hillary.
We do. Well, first off, Robin Clark is Jim Brown's best friend. And Jim Brown played for Libby, who's an admin on our page. He played basketball and football. And Tony Frost is also a great friend of Robin Clark, rest in peace. We talk about Robin all the time on the page. We honor all of our members, those that have passed and those that are present. Yeah, but Jim Brown and Tony Frost are his best friend.
How do people get to become an athlete of the 70s and 80s? Is there a charge to get on the page?
No, our membership is free. Most of the time, since it's a private page, you should be invited, or you can visit it off of the Facebook page. And we have 2 questions on there to keep the security of our members. So answering those 2 questions allows our administrators to allow you to be able to visit our page and join.
Man, I appreciate talking to you. Just going back down memory lane, do you have any closing thoughts? And remember, as you close it out, this thing will be around long after we're gone, so you can speak to the athletes of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are, athletics in Toledo, we've had some of the best athletes to ever, all over the United States. And we try to honor all of them. From our football, track, we've got our gold medalists in track, Eric Kennard out of Rogers. All of these things can be accomplished. We have to continue to focus on education and focus on discipline and being able to carry it on. But again, like I said, Toledo has had the greatest, what pushes me forward through what I do is Toledo Athletics has had the greatest athletes, to me, per capita of the size of Toledo in the United States. We've been represented in every sport, and we'd like our youngsters to carry that tradition on. we used to go out and be able to play sports and go anywhere in the city of Toledo and be able to play and compete in every district in every area, which is now missing. We would go out and the only time that you were against or in competition with that other school was when you played them. We would go anywhere we wanted to. Down at Rogers, you could go down, and play there at the fire station. We could go under the bridge and play. It developed so many great athletes and the competitive nature and the friendship and the bond that we grew in Toledo, which is really what Athletes of the 70's and 80's page is all about, the positive aspects. Not what someone done in their past, is what they did for their school and how they represented back in our day. And my thought is that, as we carry that on, like with Kalon Butler, I'm just giving an example of like Kevin Butler's son, where we honor our youth. And that's what needs to be done out there, is to give them something to do, to honor them, to allow them to be able to move around and do different things. Our boxers, we've had a tradition of great boxing all through Toledo, all the way back from Lindell Holmes all the way up till now, Albert Bell, who's also a member of our page, Jared Anderson, Coach Darrell Riley. These type of things, and Andy Bell, Frank White, these type of people, and the cartel group, these type of people that go out there and help our youth, these are the things we need. And with that, I'll close. But again, I'm sure I've missed a lot, and I didn't mean to miss anyone or anything. But I believe that Toledo Athletics is the greatest, and that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, Doc, we had the Soul City Gym where they had boxing. People didn't even know it was back there. We had Mel Long and Steve Mix and folks like that from back in the day. Ruth, any closing thoughts?
I'm with him, as long as they're doing a positive aspect. We got good people coming out. Ronald Collins got a grandson coming out of Central, Ronald Collins III. He played football this year, so he's very athletic. So, and like he said, he named a few boxers. We got the Robert Easter. It's a lot.
Got a lot going on.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Brother Hillary, it's been great talking to you, man. We look forward to doing it again.
May God bless. And we thank you so much for Ms. Clark. Let me close with saying this. This week, what I did for the past 10 days was to honor, maybe less than that though, but to honor all of our athletes and members that have passed on. It's so important that we continue to honor them because they made Toledo Athletes what it is today.
I appreciate that, man.
Thank you.
All right, you're listening to A Gram of Hope. I'm your host, Jerome Graham. I'd like to thank our producer, Chris Piper, thank Charles Hillary, thank Ruth Clark, and we thank everyone for taking the time. And we hope that from this, the experiences of others, everyday folks, and hearing their stories, that you get the hope you need to go forward. If you have any questions or comments, or you just want to listen again, go to wgte.org/HOPE. That's wgte.org/hope, or wherever you stream your podcast.
WGTE. Voices around us.
WGTE is supported in part by the American Rescue Plan Act funds allocated by the City of Toledo and the Lucas County Commissioners and administered by the Arts Commission.